Do you enjoy new concepts in games? Well, here's one for you. A dungeon crawler of which combat is heavily based on physics. Very tempting. However, is this innovation both functional and fun? Exanima's main protagonist doesn't remember much. He or she is classically a victim of amnesia. You are thrown into a very dark, ominous dungeon. There is a mysterious note in your pocket, and that's it. If you want to know more, you'll have to survive first. The combat experience, as you might know from either hack and slashes or other dungeon crawlers, might as well be forgotten. Here, you'll deal with your opponents with the use of momentum, body positioning, and timing in general. It probably will be awkward and frustrating at first, and you might feel like, how the hell I'm supposed to control this? But rage quitting aside, with both its innovation and steep learning curve, Exanima's combat system might be one of the most rewarding yet. In this unforgiving setting, you'll have to protect yourself, mostly with the use of layer system. What's an interesting factor describing armor pieces is coverage, which indicates how well your shoulder pad or chain coif covers your body. This means that we have to take into account how much of character's body is covered by specific gear piece, and is it worth exchanging it for another that, for example, covers less but then offers only a little more protection. Because what matters here is simply not weapon damage versus armor value that are both divided into categories. It's rather a physics-determined impact of a weapon hitting specific point. This also means that you could potentially have the most satisfying critical strikes. Your enemy doesn't protect his legs with armor? Well, you could try to take it to your advantage, rogue. And then there's experience. What's an interesting and very subtle solution is that in Exanima most of character XPs come not from combat but rather exploration. For example, reading documents like logs and books. Then there's global experience that's fueled by a fraction of the regular one. The former is used across all characters, including new ones, to give them a starting boost. Perfect, as even when our main character dies forever, not everything is truly lost and sense of progress is retained. Experience is exchanged to develop up to 5 techniques across 6 skill trees. This will help you in combat offensively and in defense. 2 of the technique schools are called Insight and Focus, and they're there to help master one's psychic powers. Thaumaturgy. This is essentially a spell list, a subset of skills on its own which focuses on environment manipulation. The basic is Sense Minds, that gives you an idea what is the friendliness level of specific NPC and also whether is anybody in proximity at all. Gradual transitions between blue, yellow and red, represented by web of neurons over character's head, will describe their actual attitude. So you might use your parapsychic powers to try to calm down anybody that you sense is aggressive to potentially avoid conflict. It's an interesting feature that adds extra layer of depth to the game mechanics. More diversity in thaumaturgy is likely to come in future updates as developers already designed a magic system in their universum. As it's stated in 0.8 update notes, it's mind now, force is next. Difficulty-wise, the game is closer to the Souls series rather than any other isometric title focused on real-time combat. It's clearly a hardcore position with no easy mode, a game for those players who are enthusiastic about the challenge. Its penalty is death, however before that you may get knocked down a few times and wake up later injured. Injury means reduction of your total health, which can be very rarely recovered. But please don't rely on that, as devs suggest in the game's manual. There is also a checkpoint system, but it isn't politely indicated. Your game has been saved, dear player. No, nothing like that. The game logic is, this time you're even lucky that you don't have to start from the beginning. By now I guess it won't be surprised if it's stated that the player is not led by the hand here. Yes, there is a manual in the menu that describes core mechanics. However, everyone, including the more experienced in similar titles, might need a few moments to get familiar with the game. For example, to pick up an item, you need first to open up inventory and then literally drag it there. There is no classic character sheet with slots for equipment either. To remind yourself what you're wearing, you must point over a specific piece directly on your character model. It's very cool, but imagine if you wanted to check what's the base layer you're currently wearing. Was it the peasant's cloth shirt or a soft but protective gambeson? Oh yeah, it's the gambeson. Although some might find these creative solutions tedious, they are and will be appreciated by many. The game also offers more combat-oriented arena mode, with features on its own. You start with almost nothing as usual, but with the few successful first matches you can buy armor or even hire fighters. Then you can manage and watch them fight, or join in when the match type is team-oriented. Matches are divided into tiers, and you must obtain certain rank before entering specific higher-level skirmishes. You do rank up by mastering your skills. Arena is a decent feature to the core game, and to some, it might even be the main attraction. General visual style is held within dark low fantasy, and the concept is realized convincingly well. As to animations, they're partially generated real-time due to physics collision system, and one must admit that, while at times characters' movement might look silly and clunky, for the most part it's convincing and it's pure fun to watch the chaos of it all. And because of that randomness, the struggle of your character or enemy desperately trying to get up is even more authentic and satisfying. In Exanima's grim world, there are plenty of items and environment details, and they simply look good. Visual diversity is maintained but rather toned down and realistic. For example, instead of instantly upgrading cloth to leather and then plate armor, we'll find everything in between. For example, various cloth pants and leather chest pieces of different qualities. Also, it'll take time, effort, and a keen eye before finding first decent weapon and armor piece, but those moments are at the same time rare and rewarding. Also, pace of the game itself distributes that diversity conservatively, because one might die many times before seeing something new. Locations can seem quite repetitive, but it's a dungeon crawler nonetheless. Every mini-section of these dungeons, though, is actually a different theme. We'll visit places like infirmary, tavern, blacksmith workshop, and so on. I found a minor glitch where at certain armor setup and at certain angle, character could be seen through. It's not the angle you think of though. But it's the matter of final polish, and there are still updates to come. To be completely honest though, we've all seen worse bugs in productions that were full releases. Fans of darker sound, and even perhaps those of survival horror titles, should find themselves at home here. Music builds up tension, just as it should in this setting. We're reminded by it that we're exploring an eerie place, not just a dungeon. The devil is in a detail, and here, those take the experience to the level of immersion that one would expect from a solid RPG. Closing the door with a powerful thud. It feels authentic. They're usually massive and heavy, and the comnats are usually spacious, and that's exactly how these doors sound. Sounds of dropped items, combat sounds including impacts of different weapons, or even leather boots creaking under the pressure, all add up to give the player an illusion that he's in a treacherous environment where consequences are serious. One thing I found missing, but one that would contribute to the game's quality, is voice acting. Not much talking occurs in the actual version, but it could give the moment a special quality. It is understood that this feature is being worked on, and who knows how it will develop in the end, hopefully with sound. The physics-based dungeon crawler is in the early access for a solid few years now. Its update frequency was rather sparse and irregular, but now and then there finally emerged an update that added a fair bit of improvements and features. like a decent 0.8 with Mind's Thaumaturgy. And while it won't really be an argument to defend the update frequency, one must note that the Exanima is actually an introduction to the next game of the developers, a sui generis, a more of an open-world RPG. One can safely bet that the development of the original title took more time than expected, and in effect, Bare Metal Entertainment gave us a very decent prelude as an appetizer and something to do in the meantime. On its own, it's a solid title, and a demanding one. It's just it might not be for everybody. However, it truly shines with its bold new approach to combat system that is already very impressive, seemingly with few more improvements and tweaks to come. Most within its dark theme is executed well, starting with detailed sounds, the visual design of equipment or enemies, while just few enhancements would make the experience more complete. While not every fresh idea automatically sets up a canon, this title certainly has at least some potential to do so. Game Trend's final predicted score is